Welcome back to the Diversity Project. Today we are speaking to some industry professionals that help service our senior community. And we just had an amazing guest, Julie Wexler. She represents the Bristol Assisted Living. And to start, or I should say to transition, we are now in studio with Margreit McGinnis, who is an amazing financial planner. So I know you've been a guest on the show before, right. And so easy to speak with you, and I think that you really explain well to our audience about services that are available. So I appreciate you taking the time to come back in.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I love doing your show, and it's great to be in a position to be able to talk to people and give them some sensible direction. So all good.
I love it. So we just had Julie on from the Bristol. So
right.
I generally, as you see, I'm fidgeting with my paperwork. I always want to make sure we cover a certain amount of things. Mm-hmm. I want to start with segueing from Julie, talking about assisted living. Tell me about long-term care.
So this is a really big piece of retirement planning. And I know we talked about that's really what we wanted to cover, but you can't cover retirement planning without talking about long-term care. And what's happening in the industry is 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when this product first launched for insurance companies, they had no claims experience, they had no actuarial data to be able to say where the premiums should be, how much the coverage should be. And over these last 20 years, the coverage has evolved. And unfortunately, because claims experience is very high. So what that means is a lot of people, a high percentage of seniors, are going into either home care, assisted living, or full care facilities, high percentage. So as a result of that, insurance companies have pulled back on the bells and whistles in these policies, and it's become more expensive. So the earlier you actually plan for this, the better. But one of the most devastating things that we see in the financial planning industry is when people ignore the issue, they don't think it's going to happen to them, they plan on maybe 80 to 120,000 of retirement income. Now all of a sudden the spouse needs care, and even home care in New York will run you 70 to 80,000 a year. A full care facility might be as much as 140,000. So now if you've saved for and planned for 100,000 of income,
you're negative every month.
You've now just doubled what you need in order to pay for the spouse. And moving assets out of your need, like doing some planning with elder care, in mind, takes time. So if you're caught kind of last minute and you haven't planned, it could be really devastating.
So take somebody like myself, right? So my birthday's coming up. I'll be 48 years old. That's a big forecast. But we want to start early.
Yes.
What is too early?
Well, too early might be under 45. But between 45 and 60 or between 45 and 55 are actually pretty prime years to be at least looking at the coverage. So I figure what I like to say is my job as a planner is to say, okay, this is what we need to think about. So we can present all the options and then you can actually decide, I'm going to self-insure and I'm not going to worry about this. And that's okay as long as you're making an informed decision. But ignoring the issue altogether is most likely going to not be good for you at 75, age 80 when you need care. So I would say it's a good time to keep, because now at 48, you're keeping your premiums on the low side.
So is there a specific recommendation that you make to somebody that might be in that 35 to 55 that then can segue as a basis maybe for a down payment or a segue into long-term care?
Well, one of the first things I would say is making sure your cash reserve is adequate. That's so important across the board for anything that you're going to do. But certainly at 35, you're too young really to think about long-term care insurance, but you're never too young to build your cash reserve. So you really need 6 months of money set aside for emergencies in case your car breaks down, in case, to meet insurance deductibles for homeowners claims, or even if you just decide once COVID is done and we all have our vaccination, you might want to go to Italy. Let's make sure you have some money set aside. Italy's on my list, which is why I say that. But I'm just saying it could be anywhere.
Sure.
But let's just make sure you're in a secure situation where you don't have to liquidate stocks if the market takes a hit. Now you have to worry about liquidating an investment, and you might be taking a loss that you don't have to take. So these are reasons why cash reserves are so important.
Now give me an idea. probably the wrong question because I'm going to say for compliance purposes, you may not be able to respond.
Right.
Is there a range? I'll say it like that. Is there a range for how much premiums may cost for long-term care, and how do they underwrite for that? Is it based on age? Is it based on sex, health conditions?
It's underwriting is all of the above. So premiums are the only thing I can say is my experience. So my policy, I picked an amount to insure myself, considering I'm going to have Social Security income, I'm going to have some pension income. So those things combined with my long-term care insurance would allow my children to provide care for me so that they don't have to pay out of their pockets while they're accumulating wealth and they're building their assets and they're worrying about their own things. So that's why I did mine. So mine is maybe $100 a month. I mean, it's a few years old, but I did it just before I turned 50. So the premiums were relatively low, but I also kept my coverage at a reasonable amount. I didn't overinsure, I didn't underinsure, and as I said, like I looked at where my retirement income is going to come from. So if you're in good health, and females actually, unfortunately, pay more for long-term care than males in general, and that's because actuarial tables tell us women live longer, and they're more likely to need care for longer periods of time.
And that was going to be my next question. When you take out a long-term care policy, does it expire?
No, generally not. Again, it's going to depend on the bells and whistles available in the particular, whatever the insurance company is. But the industry is shrinking. There are fewer and fewer companies that are even offering the coverage. So if you're in that window from 45 to 55, now is really the time, because 5 years from now, there may be only one, maybe only one company offering it. So this is kind of the time to be at least looking at the risk and deciding whether you're going to self-insure or not self-insure, so those things. So, I'm hoping that I'm answering your question.
No, you're doing, and I'm just listening because I'm intrigued. Tell me a little bit, off air, we've spoken a little bit about the tax triangle.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Right. So we're not, have a visual aid. I usually, when I'm in front of clients, like to have my piece of paper so I can draw charts and pictures and help people visualize what I'm talking about. But if you think of a triangle, and each corner there's a different taxable event for your income and retirement. So tax-free, tax deferred, and after tax. And then think about the middle is your pool of income. So let's say 100,000, keep the math easy. So it's 100,000 you want to pull every year. Rather than have everything in tax deferred, where if you're pulling 100,000 a year out of tax deferred, you're keeping yourself in a high tax bracket.
Yeah.
Because we have a progressive tax system, and that means the more we make, the higher our rate is. So when you're retired, I like to make sure as people are accumulating their wealth that they're taking advantage of all three corners, so that 100,000 a year can come from either exhausting the tax-free bucket first, or we never want to exhaust the after tax because that's really your current savings.
Sure.
But we want to take a piece of that from each, so that maybe instead of paying 25% taxes, you're paying 15%. So if you can save yourself 10% down the road, that's why, I like the balance.
Now, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've had people say to me that they're afraid to speak to somebody who does planning. And I think a lot of it is because they feel like it's going to cost them a lot of money, just even for a consultation. What are the different types of professionals in your space that may or may not charge, and somebody like yourself?
So there's different structures that people have. Some people will do the planning complimentary, and they'll do a simple plan, which is not going to be, like a very in-depth analysis, but it's going to give you a simple answer to some of your basic goal questions. And they may do that complimentary under the auspice that they're going to manage your assets, or you're going to do your insurance with them. Because, it's not evil to earn a commission. It's okay. It's okay. There's lots of people that earn commissions, and that's not evil as long as it's disclosed. So then you have people that may be fee only. So for instance, maybe they're not even looking to manage your assets. They're not looking to do your insurance, but they're an independent consult, so that they can say, okay, you're going to pay me $700 a year or $1,000 a year on retainer, and I'm going to look at everything, and I'm going to make sure you stay on task with your goals. But then you have other people that may manage your assets and do your insurance. And then there's charging the fee and managing your assets and doing the insurance. So there's all kinds of different structures. And I found over these last 25 years in this business, it's really about building the relationship with somebody. And I think, as long as your compensation is fair and it's disclosed to your client in a very simplistic way, not in a layered, complicated, double talk kind of way, then it's okay.
And I think also, end on this note, it's probably worth the investment in their time. Because if they don't take the time to meet with a planner and create a strategy for their retirement, then everything else when the time comes is going to be bottlenecked and they're going to have no options.
Absolutely. So don't wait too long. And if you're already nearing retirement, this is also a good time, because especially if you're getting a pension, I know we're running out of time, we're down to the last second, but pension planning and retirement before you make that choice is super important.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. We are in studio with Margreit McGinnis. For any of her contact information, visit www.thediversityprojectli.com. Stay tuned for our next guest.